Everyone, the Indian Grandmaster Arjun absolutely destroyed Sam Shankland today, and I just wanted to show you this game. So it was played in the Tata Steel Rapid Chess events that's going on in India at the moment in Calcutta. So Arjun opens up with d4 here. We have d5 from Shankland, knight to f3, knight to f6, and now bishop to f4, starting the London system. Pawn to e6, pawn to e3, bishop to d6, challenging that diagonal. Bishop to d3 now from Arjun, castles from Shankland, knight bd2, b6. So these are all quite standard opening moves, and black's looking to put the bishop on b7 here so that it will later support a knight hopping into e4. So we have knight to e5 here, pawn to c5, a standard break, c3 solidifying the centre, queen to c7, adding more pressure to e5 here, queen out to f3, again a typical manoeuvre in the London, coming onto the king side immediately and looking to attack the king, knight b to d7 from black, and now queen to g3, already eyeing the g7 pawn. Now here I don't really like the way in which Shankland plays, so he drops his knight back to e8, which looks a bit passive to me. I'm not completely sure why he didn't play the knight into h5 and just pick up this dark squared bishop. I guess he didn't want this clamp coming in on e5 perhaps, but even so, the way he goes wrong here for a player of his calibre is really surprising. So knight to e8 was played, now we have knight d to f3, further solidifying this e5 square. We have cd in the centre, pawn recaptures, and now bishop takes e5, which is a really horrible looking move and doesn't help black's problems at all. Black's still really cramped after playing this move, so I think better here would have been to play, say, knight d to f6. I mean, in general, I would always have put the bishop on b7 a lot sooner here because I like playing this variation myself. And I put the bishop on b7, I leave the queen on d8, and then I manoeuvre these knights into e4. But okay, we had bishop takes on e5, then the pawn recaptured here, g6 from black, and now castles from Arjun. I mean, you could play pawn to h4 here. I think that's what a lot of people would play. But he recognises how powerful his position already is. He can even just castle and play this in a very kind of standard and controlled manner. So castles, knight to c5, rook a to c1, pinning the knight, a5 from Shankland. And this is really just an awful position for black. When you're playing moves like a5, it's hardly going to generate a lot of serious counterplay. So we have queen h4 coming onto these dark squares like this. Bishop to a6, Arjun's only too happy to oblige, chopping off those bishops. We have pawn recaptures, and after this exchange here we can see it's a sorry sight for black. A rook stuck on a6, a horrible knight on e8, the rook's trapped here on f8, the knight's pinned to the queen, there's no real counterplay going on, so Arjun now has a completely free hand on the king side. So he plays pawn to g4, a nice breaking move, taking away these two squares and just throwing pawns at the black king. We have knight to g7, and this really sums up the troubles for Shankland now, because after queen to h6, he literally has to move that knight back to exactly where it came from if he's going to stop the threat of knight g5 and checkmating on h7. Then he'd need to move back here so he can play f5 and defend like this with the queen. But the problem now is that you go knight g5, and after say f5, well, we just take the pawn on e6 because the knight on c5 is pinned, and the whole house is collapsing here, as we can see. So coming back here, after knight g7, queen h6, Shankland actually resigned. He literally had enough in this position after 19 moves. So quite incredible really that a Grandmaster of his calibre can be going down to a London system in 19 moves. So I don't know what happened with Shankland today, but awesome day for Arjun. I mean, he won all 3 of his games and he's now actually sitting top of the leaderboard with 5 out of 6. So beating out Aronian, Shankland as things stand. We've got Prag, Adiban in there, so some really strong players that are just sitting down below him now. So yeah, awesome start to the tournament for him, and it will be really exciting to see where he can take it in days 3 and 4. Thanks very much for watching. Do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again in a future video. Thanks for watching.